Hello and welcome to Where You're Not Entertained. I'm Daniel.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm James.
And we're going to be continuing spooky season with the coverage of Crimson Peak.
Lesser spooky compared to most of the stuff we watch.
Yeah, it's more gothic romance, really, than anything else.
Yeah.
Well, it's a drama horror mystery, according to IMDb.
Yeah. Well, it's Guillermo del Toro.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say it's as horror as Pan's Labyrinth is.
Yeah, so it's a little spooky and a little otherworldly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's got ghosties.
It does have ghosties.
So there we go. That's the spook factor.
I'll be honest, I didn't like it as much. I watched this back in the day. When was it? Like
2015?
2015?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it like a year after it came out or somewhere in that time frame. I don't remember exactly. And I liked it. I thought it was good. This time around, I mean, it's not that I hated it. I didn't have a bad time. The visuals, I love the visuals. I think the visuals are the reason why it was enjoyable for me. But it's a little more campy than I remembered.
Campy in what way?
And just how like kind of over the top it gets at times, and just some funny aspects to it, like the way she's kind of fighting against the addition of a love story in her ghost story, and then immediately falls head over heels for Tom Hiddleston's character and goes into a long love story. And I don't know, it's funny and in those regards, but at the same time, it's really the visuals are what got me the most. I love them. I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah, visually this movie is astounding.
Stunning. Yes.
Stunning.
Yeah, I mean, I still love this movie. I'm so on board with Crimson Peak and pretty much everything about it. The costumes are just amazing and the acting is good. I'm a huge fan of Mia Wasikowska. I think pretty much everything she does is enjoyable. I've enjoyed most of her films, and Tom Hiddleston's good, as well as Jessica Chastain.
I mean, we're pretty much working with an all-star cast here.
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, at least from my perspective, I mean,
Charlie Hunnam.
Yeah, Charlie Hunnam is your dashing doctor. But I thought the story was really good, and I do understand your point that she fights about putting a love story in her novel, but she does also make several quips about she doesn't want to be unmarried, she wants to be a widow, or she comes back at jokes like that. So I think you still get this sense of her being interested in romance, just not wanting to write what's expected of her.
No, I think that's and I think that's a fair argument as well. It's not that I think that there's not layers to it. It's just on the surface level, it was kind of funny at first glance. But
yeah, no, I totally.
It's also heavily like acted. I think it's well acted, but it's very dramatic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're not expecting it, those moments can be a little bit funny.
Yeah, I think in that sense, that's a little bit of a Guillermo del Toro thing. He tends to like a little heavier style.
Yeah. Which I like that too. I mean, definitely that's something that kind of has to happen in theater. And so I think that style can be good, but it can have some funny reactions sometimes.
Yeah, and I think in this in particular, it really fits the setting as far as the time period's concerned.
Yeah, and the story type.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, this is this is one of those horror films that we said it's not really a horror film. It is, but it isn't. But it's got its own feel compared to a lot of stuff. It is very Guillermo del Toro. I couldn't even say his name. It's got the same feel as a lot of his movies, as far as the stylization and emphasis on acting and things like that go.
And colors.
Yeah. Incredible sets.
Yeah. But it's not. So, as we said, and I guess we'll go ahead and say spoiler alert, it's a 2015 movie. So hopefully you've seen it, but if not, I would suggest checking it out. But as we mentioned, it's got ghosts, right? But the ghosts aren't, and kind of as she's saying in her novel, it's not a ghost story. The ghosts are, I think she said the ghosts are a metaphor in her story, but the ghosts in this are here to tell a story. They're not to even though they can be scary, they look scary. They look like, some of them anyway, look like they're drenched in blood and, kind of creeping around or whatever. Come to find out it's red mud, clay.
It's clay, yeah.
Right.
But they're here to tell the story and not scare you. They're trying to tell you to not be scared of them and be scared of the people that you're in, the actual people that you're in the house with.
The ones who are actually going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely a warning.
Absolutely, they're a warning.
And I really appreciate the visual of them, that they're not these sort of gauzy floating specters that you normally get with ghosts.
They're not Casper.
Yeah, they're not Casper, but they're not like the ghosts and the Frighteners or Harry Potter. They're just not these gauzy projections.
Right. No, they're very much kind of, other than the decay, they're very much what they would be, right? They're in the form of skeletons and things like that. They're not they don't look like flesh and bone that you can just see through.
Yeah, they tend to be indicative of the way they died.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Which I think is pretty cool. One of the cool things about this movie in particular, their mother, as a for instance, when she's coming down the hall or whatever, she's got the cleaver in her head, but it's bleeding up, into the ether. It's really cool. The lady that's in the mud, or in the clay, I guess I keep calling it mud.
Yeah.
But is in the clay that's crawling around.
Rich with ore.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that they're all different. Her mother is dressed in black.
Yes. Yeah, because her mother didn't die some grisly, murderous death.
Right. She died and was buried.
Yeah. Well, and even with,
But that was also in America. That wasn't out where the clay was.
Well, correct. Yes.
Where the red clay was?
It wasn't where the red clay was.
Right. She saw her mother when she was younger, still living in America.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And even, at the very end with the way Thomas returns, I thought that was such a cool visual because he's still, essentially in human form because he's just died, but the way that his face is still bleeding. And I thought some of those were just nice touches, especially to look at.
Yeah, it makes it much more of an artistic horror film.
Yeah, which detracts a little bit from the inherent scariness of it.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's only a few parts that you could consider scary, and all those parts are with the ghosts. Like when she's a child and her mother is coming to her, or when she's older and her mother's coming to her.
Yeah.
When the ladies in the manor are trying to warn her. So there's just those few instances, and the rest of it's just I'd call it like a love story / murder mystery.
Right.
Yeah, it's like it's a Victorian romance.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
in the sense that there's literal romance and there's the kind of adventure to the old world and a giant manor and the mysteries of the manor and what are they hiding kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And a heavy dose of sinister.
A heavy dose of sinister.
And I also really enjoyed the use of the bugs in this, the moths and the butterflies, and just all the little symbolisms that happen throughout this.
Mm-hmm.
I like that about Guillermo del Toro. He never just flat out says something, really. He tends to just give you pictures and pieces to build something. And I appreciate that. And I also, especially based on the timeline where this is supposed to happen, the relationship that Edith has with her father was just awesome. That's not typical for the time period.
No, not at all.
No, to see him just support her and want her independence.
Yeah, I was just like kind of empowering her to do what she likes to do.
Yeah,
right.
Not a common
Make your
thing.
own way.
Yeah, and I like that. I think that paints a good picture of who she is and the sort of strength she has at the end, especially.
Yeah, because it requires some.
Yeah.
Once you find out you're in the house with a couple of crazy murderers.
That your husband's been having an affair with his sister.
Yeah, it's more of he's having an affair with her.
Well, yeah, it's
even
been going
more.
on a long time before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, and your sister's trying to slowly poison and kill you for your money.
Right. It's an incestuous pair of black widows, basically.
Which we've done multiple times at this point.
Yeah, it's a hobby. It's how we fuel the manor.
Right.
It's a hobby. I like to tinker, so I marry women and then kill them for their money.
It's a Sunday afternoon kind of endeavor.
I mean, when you can't get your little clay machine to work, what other skills do you have?
I am a baroness after all.
Baronet.
Baronet after all. I did say baroness.
Not a baroness, but yeah.
He's both.
I thought they were just called barons.
Yeah, I think it's a time period thing.
Yeah.
Either way.
I have no idea.
I don't either. Not familiar with it. Yeah, but this is one of those movies that I really enjoy watching around this time of year. It just has the right feel, the darkness and the imagery and all of that. It's fitting for spooky season, even though it's not a particularly spooky movie.
It's got the right ambience.
Yeah, it does. And people seem to like it pretty well. What the IMDb rating is a 6.5 out of 10. Metascore is a 66. So, especially when you're talking about films that are in the horror genre, that's a really high rating.
It's because Tim Burton only makes so many movies. And to have something that isn't a Tim Burton movie that still hits all of those kind of feelings where it's like incredible visuals, a dark gothic feel to it, kind of gray undertones, but there's still this almost like kind of lighthearted Disney-esque Disney-ishness to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that you don't feel like you're going to have the worst things in the world happen in front of you. Like, you do feel a little safe, and like there's rails on this ride.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know. It reminds me of a Burton-like movie. It definitely has its own differences and styles, and I'm not saying that Guillermo del Toro was trying to do a Tim Burton movie here or anything like that, but there's similarities that remind me of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he does a very mature version of what Tim Burton does. He's just a little more subtle with it.
Tim Burton's a child.
No, yeah, I love his visuals, but he goes hard with his visuals and his offbeat themes, and I think that's great. I think that sets him apart, and I think what Guillermo del Toro does is he sets a similar mood and tone, but he does it in this more grown-up sort of Oscar-y way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he understands a way to make it, I don't want to say more artistic because it's not, but it's just a little more clean or sophisticated, something like that.
Yeah. Real,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, not quite so far-fetched.
Yeah. Not in like the writing or anything, but just in
Not made out of clay.
not the atmosphere. Well,
Style.
not made out of clay, but
Well, I really think of like Beetlejuice.
right. Yeah, exactly. Not the weird sculptures and the random machine that's outside that like digs the
red clay.
yard or
That's this
whatever.
movie.
No. Right, but that looked
I'm
like an
kidding.
actual machine that would
Yes.
exist. Whereas in Beetlejuice, the little digging machine looks like it looks like it's out of a Dr. Seuss book.
Yeah. It's slightly brought back from the fantasy side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I think it's a little more grounded in reality. It might be a fantastical tale, but
Yeah.
the environment is still realistic and not as weird.
So in that vein, it's a little more like Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that they're like styled movies. You could watch them back to back at Halloween and it'd be a good time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, back to this movie. Yeah, I love Crimson Peak. This has been one of my favorites since I saw it in theaters.
Good story.
You guys want to do favorite scenes?
Sorry, I didn't realize I needed like a whole monologue.
I thought you were just going to say something more, but you didn't.
Well, apologies for my lack of words.
Sure, favorite scenes. Yes, I really enjoy this movie. Like I said, I think people, if you haven't seen it, you should watch it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's got some incredible visuals. I wish it was spookier.
Yeah, that's fair. Cool.
All right, well, I'll jump out there right away with favorite scenes.
Okay.
Sure.
Mine was definitely when her father gets his face smashed in. Well, it's that because it's I don't know, it's just shockingly violent out of nowhere. Compared to the rest of the movie so far, at least. And it's probably the thing that earns its rated R rating because I was kind of surprised it was rated R. I could see this getting away with a PG-13, but this and then the scene right after at the morgue may be the reason why. There's other scenes in between, but the morgue comes later, but it's following the American side of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they cut it to try to make sure that you can't tell that it's the sister, Lucille, instead of you're thinking it's Thomas the whole time. He's the likely suspect there.
Right.
But then you take that, and also they show a pretty graphic smash in the face when he lands on the ground. But when they cut back to his body, it's obscured by the angle of his chin because you're looking like from his feet, and it starts to pan. And right before you'd start to see that horror again, it ends up cutting to the next scene. And I just really liked the way that they played with the suspense right there and used graphic violence to shock you and then played with your desire not to see it again and used it to build suspense without actually having to show more gore.
Yeah.
Plus, I also like it because later when they show his dead body in the morgue, his face is like collapsed 3 times as far in as it is when he's laying on the ground. So in my own head canon, I just imagine her like taking a piece of the broken sink and smashing his face in with it over and over and over again.
Okay.
Well, he has like a little hole in his head when he falls on the ground. His whole face is collapsed when they look at him in the morgue.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. She would have collapsed his sinuses, so that's pretty much what would happen.
No, I definitely agree. I think it was a really powerful, necessary scene, I guess, to show you the level of ruthlessness. You don't know who it is.
You know what you're dealing with, who you're dealing with.
Exactly.
Bad things can happen.
Yeah, they didn't just
it makes it more
They didn't just walk up behind him and shoot him.
Right.
Right.
And if you call that an accident, I'm like, hey.
Main characters are going to die.
Yeah.
Yes.
Indeed, indeed.
Well, that was my favorite scene.
Good one.
That was a good one. Faux show.
All right, Daniel, what was your favorite scene?
I think my favorite scene is going to be it's kind of I guess a continuation. Anyway, it's when Charlie Hunnam's character Alan is going to the McMansion.
Oh, that's mine too. When Dr. McMichael shows up in the snow.
Yeah, exactly. So it's from the part where he arrives at the that's a post office, right?
Yeah.
Where he arrives at the post office and is like, "Hey, can I run a horse?" And they're like, "Nah, we're closing up." And he was like, "Okay, well, no, you can't take your own horse because it's going to be too tired. It's going to die. I guess I'm going to walk." And you're like, dude, you're going to die out there walking.
Yeah, and he's just determined.
He didn't die, though, walking. He made it all the way there just in time for Edith to be shoved off of like the 4th story of the house to go tumbling down and land like back first on the banister of the 2nd floor.
And how did she just break a leg?
I feel like she'd be pretty mangled after that.
I think she'd be pretty dead in like 15 minutes.
Well, and she's supposed to be like 17 or something in this.
I have no idea.
I guess that makes you a little resilient.
It would make you much more resilient.
A pretty big pile of snow.
She did land, but still,
yeah,
falling 2 stories onto a wooden banister.
That would do more than
it would. It would hurt.
Yeah, I like when he arrives and throws the doors open, and it's just the snow billowing around him. It was a good visual.
It was.
It brings him in this sort of fury in a way.
Yeah, because he's here to save the day.
Right.
And he tries to, he gets a valiant effort. Unfortunately for him, he gets stabbed twice. Once in the armpit, that's
Ouch.
Pretty dangerous.
Yeah, and it also shows you Thomas' change of heart when he's asking where to stab him.
Well, yeah, because he doesn't want to kill him.
Right. Because he doesn't want to continue what they've been doing.
I don't think that he's had it in him the whole time.
Right.
He's never been the one that's actually done the killing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lucille is really the one that's she's a psychopath.
She's a little unhinged.
Full-fledged.
Yeah, and that's a good scene. It's got so much happening because the doctor shows up to save her. You finally realize what the two of them have done to their mother and that Thomas really had nothing to do with it. And that this whole time it's pretty much been Lucille pushing. And then the doctor gets stabbed and Lucille's got those amazing billowing sleeves and she's just running all through the house like a crazy scorned person is. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Yeah. I think it's a good scene because that scene in itself kind of reveals the character of everybody that's in it, which are, the four main characters of this movie are all in the scene. And yeah, you really get to find out who's made out of what.
Yeah, it turns everyone transparent. So whatever questions you'd been holding on to, that scene sort of cleared them up, and just in time for the final big showdown, if you will.
Final battle, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was mine.
Good choice.
So and it's Rachel's too. So
it was a good scene.
Very good scene. All right. Well, then I think that about does it for Crimson Peak.
I think so.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed our coverage of it. If you did, then please go online and like and subscribe. Make sure to join us next time on Were You Not Entertained?